So once again, we join together as a nation and we stop what we're doing to honor and celebrate the life and the legacy of a great man. A man who this country would not be what it is if it were not for him. The only person with a statue in the mall in Washington, D.C. who is not a president. The only person who has a national holiday that we celebrate his birthday who is not a president. Why? Because Martin Luther King Jr. helped finish what the founders did not have the tenacity, the will, the moral courage, or the convictions to confront. At the time of the founding of this nation, 22% of the people living here were African slaves. We could not have had an independent democracy that broke away from England if we did not have a slave economy to fuel the possibility. So our founders, who were noble and courageous and visionary in their leadership for human freedom, for which we rightly celebrate them, also fell short in ways that continued to rob certain people of their dignity and their basic humanity under the law. And so our founders left a crucial part of the work of building a free nation unfinished. Abe Lincoln and a whole bunch of other men and women, black and white, in his time helped America begin to correct this immoral compromise upon which this nation was founded. And so we commemorate his birthday as well with a national holiday, and there is a beautiful statue of him in the mall in Washington, D.C., a statue upon whose steps Martin Luther King told us about a dream. And in so doing, Martin Luther King courageously gave his life in order that this nation would finally treat African Americans, men, women, and children with the dignity they deserve as full human beings. And he and all those who marched and all those who spoke and all those who gave their life, who he helped to lead, helped our nation become the nation that it is. And it might very well be a fascist apartheid state. And so we celebrate Dr. King's birthday. And this is not a time for what we used to call, when I was in college, cheap PC chit-chat, cheap politically correct chit-chat. Because this is no longer just about a debate about rights. It's about what does it mean to be a certain kind of human being. And that's why I'm glad that our brother Randy brought up the salient slogan from Socrates, know thyself. Socrates says in Plato's Apology 38:8, the unexamined life is not worth living. And so on this third week of our sermon series on living a justice-driven life, we honor Dr. King by examining ourselves to look at what kind of person do I want to be. And those of us who have done this know that the unexamined life is not worth living, and the examined life is often painful. And so people don't want to go there very often. Some people would just as soon we do this only one weekend a year. Because it takes incredible courage to face the fact that this country, as astonishing as it is, as blessed as we are, was founded on vicious white supremacy and male supremacy, not to mention homophobia, and the fact that we did not treat the indigenous people as we ought to have. And despite the Civil War, the civil rights and civil unions, we have not completely untangled ourselves from this legacy. And so there's more work to do, and that's what commemorating Dr. King is about. Not simply singing songs and engaging in cheap, politically correct chit-chat. We have to avoid what my Professor Cornel West calls the Santa Clausification of Dr. King. Right? We can't just dust him off once a year, dress him up, and make a holiday out of him. Right? He can't just become an isolated icon on a pedestal in the struggle for decency and dignity. There's too much still left to do. The incredible story of freedom unfolding continues, and you and I are characters in the drama. And Randy's right. This is a time for self-examination and self-interrogation in order to figure out what kind of human being do you want to be on this journey from the womb to the tomb. And so what happens to our beloved Randy? He finds himself living a parable. The story of the banquet in the Gospel of Luke chapter 14. What's so interesting about this story at the time that Jesus told it, and what makes it so memorable, is because at that time it was completely out of the question. That's why it was so radical and subversive for Jesus to tell that story. And that's why the authorities eventually captured him and killed him. Right? It's stories like this in the Bible that help me to realize that we have also seen a kind of Santa Clausification of Jesus in contemporary Christianity. Jesus, what he was saying and suggesting were things that were so incendiary and revolutionary that even today in the 21st century we are shocked. Let's look at the banquet story in Luke chapter 14 for a minute. Who was Jesus telling this to? Jesus was at a banquet being put on by the Pharisees. Who were the Pharisees? The Pharisees were officials who considered themselves to be the authorities on Jewish law. What happens right before Jesus tells this story? He heals a man right there in front of the Pharisees on the Sabbath. This is like going to a party of a police officer and breaking the law right there in front of the police officer. And then he tells this story about a man who has a banquet. The banquet is a parable. In this parable is a reference to the kingdom of heaven on earth. Time and time again, Jesus tells these parables to describe what does this kingdom look like. And in the image, the banquet is filled not with people who think they're righteous, not with people who say they follow all the laws, that they know what the scriptures say, that they are people who feel they have the right to have an invitation, that they know that they belong there because of their station in life. No, it is a party filled with all kinds of people from the streets and from all around. And as Bible scholar John Dominic Crossan says, that means that it would most likely include a mixing together of people of different sexes and classes and stations in life, social rank. Anyone could be sitting and reclining next to anyone else. Male next to female. Free next to slave, socially high next to socially low, ritually impure next to ritually pure. Anyone who knows about the cross-cultural anthropology of eating in the ancient Near East knows that this would be a complete social nightmare. Just think about Randy's story in our times, in our open society. Right? Just having that one woman come from off the streets would have been radical and could have created social chaos even in his humble home among his eclectic friends. In Jesus' time, to be even suggesting something like this was not only unheard of, it was absolutely unthinkable. So why is it there? Because Jesus was naming what the kingdom of heaven on earth would look like. This is the welcome table. This is the beloved community, the kingdom of God. Jesus was showing us the goal of human community and the purpose of religion. And it's not about a bunch of legalisms and moralisms and exclusive ideas about who's a believer and who's in and who's out. It was about overcoming tribal exclusivism and all kinds of cultural boundaries that kept some people up and some people down, and kept people apart and afraid of each other and fearful of each other and away from each other. He is suggesting a kind of revolutionary egalitarianism that we keep inching closer to, but have not yet achieved. Now I can hear it, but Marlin, you're preaching to the choir this morning. We're all here. This church is called All Souls. We understand the vision of a world in which all people are included and accepted and brought together with justice for all. So what are people like us supposed to do? Now there's three things that I see in this parable that we are being told to do. First, we need self-examination. Where in your life are you one of the Pharisees? Right? Where are you an interpreter of the laws, the rules? Where are you a gatekeeper of the mores and the norms that maintain the culture? Is it at work? Is it at home? Is it here at church? Is it at school? Right? And in those places, are you using your influence to nudge the world closer to the banquet that Jesus spoke of and Martin Luther King dreamed about? And when you are sitting at the table with the officials of the institutions who have the power and who have the influence, when you're sitting at those tables, when you make it to the table, are you risking, like Jesus and Dr. King, telling the stories and sharing the dream that can help other people who are outside to finally come on inside? That can change some people's nightmare into a dream. The second thing that this parable is teaching us is asking of us is, what excuses do you have to not show up to the banquet? I can't leave all my stuff, or my neighborhood, or what can't you leave behind in order to join the party? Right? What excuses do you have to not even take up one of the opportunities that we have out there for this year and this church to do this kind of self-reflection and examination around race and culture and class? Right? On the front of the order of service, there's 6 things. Circle one, circle them all, put them in your calendar. Come. We're having a party here at All Souls. Are you coming? There's a meeting, we just heard of a 7th one. It's in the order of service about a conference going on in Dallas next month. We're being invited to come and examine some of these issues. And there's a third point that undergirds all the other points, and that is know thyself. And here's why. There used to be a time when people thought that those who were different from them were scary and less than, couldn't be as good as, right? And eventually most of us came to realize that people are basically the same, that people are people, and it doesn't matter what they look like or love like or how they dress or how they worship. They're people, human beings, right? And so most people in the choir who I'm preaching to today might say, I don't see race and color, I just see people. One might say, I'm colorblind, and think that we've reached the goal. But it's not the goal, and we need to be really careful that we don't get stuck in that place, right? This is where our friend Socrates comes in. The way to move past color blindness is to spend some time in self-examination. Or to use Randy's metaphor, to unpack some of our bags to see what's inside. Now, of course, it's true that people are basically all people. We share most of the same fundamental needs and concerns And yet we are all also different in some really important ways. And when we say that we are all colorblind, or when we say that we are colorblind, right, what we're really doing is assuming that everybody else is just like we are. Right? We're just projecting our own values and our own culture on everybody. Well, we're all pretty much the same. I know who I am, so kind of everybody's sort of like me. This is the problem with colorblindness. So it's really important for us to be clear about what is my culture? What do I bring to the table? Know thyself. I want you to find a pen and a paper. There's pen and paper. You can just use your order of service. Just use a corner that's got some space. I want you to write down 5 words. There's pens in there, and I want you to think of 5 words that describe you, your identity in the world, right? I could put minister, I could put man, I could put father, right? 5 things like that. I don't mean things like talkative, right? I could put that too, but no, I mean descriptors. Who are you? How are you seen? Your gender, your social status, put down things, 5 things that describe you. It's not a test. You're not going to have to show it to anybody. You're not going to have to turn to the person next to you. Just put down 5 things for me quickly, and we'll go from there. No one's going to hold you to these. All right? So now, I hope you have 5. If you don't, quick, write that last 1 or 2 down. Come on. It's not that hard. Now, I want you to cross 1 off. Just cross 1 off. I know, don't overthink it. Just cross 1 off. I know there's some complaining and people don't want to do it. Now, did you cross 1 off? Okay, now cross 2 more off. All right. All right. I'm hearing some pain. Some wanting and some wailing out there. Well, now, I want you to cross 1 more off. The guttural cries and the moans and the groans. Now you should have 1 left. No, was that hard? Was it hard? Right? Do you see how we all have multiple identities that help describe who we are? And when we stereotype somebody, we focus primarily on one part of who they are, and we lift that up and we lift that out. And it is painful to have other parts of who we are denied and diminished and put aside. The performer last night in our coffee house music series, Daryl Scott, he sang a song. It was very moving, and it's called Passing. And he said he wrote it last time he was in Oklahoma. He read an article in the newspaper about a woman who was half Cherokee, half white. And so she talked about how when she was in community with other Indians, she would pass as Cherokee, and then when she was in the mainstream community in other parts of her life, she would pass as being white. The artist had never heard of that use of the term passing before. He said, I've heard of pass the potatoes, I've heard of passing out, but he never heard of passing in this way. A colorblind community is a big step from a racist community and society. But color blindness requires people to learn to pass. Right? And the kingdom of heaven on earth is a beloved community where we can bring all of ourselves to the table and be cherished and celebrated for who we are, fully and unafraid and unashamed. Right? Now I'm curious, how many people who in this society who are considered white by our society put down white as one of your 5 things? So I see 4 or 5 people, okay? And that's pretty typical. It's very few, sometimes none. I know some of you who raised your hands have done this exercise before, because I was with you. Now, I'm curious how many who are considered white in this culture put down as one of your 5 your ethnic heritage somewhere on there. Greek, Italian, French, Irish. 1, 2. Okay? Excellent. Now, I'm just curious, those who are considered a person of color in our society, maybe African American, maybe Hispanic, maybe Asian American in some way, how many put down your ethnic heritage or race or color as one of your identity? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay. So this is typically how this works, that folks who are identified as white in the culture don't put down white or their ethnicity, and people who are considered, who are considered people of color in some way in the community will put down that as an important characteristic, and oftentimes in many settings that will be the one that is left of all of those, right? And the point of all this is that we have all been whitewashed, right? And the next step is to discover what it is that this whitewashing is doing to us and to others around us when we accept the idea of whiteness as even a concept in the world, and we need to untangle ourselves from it, right? And this is not just for white folks, right? Even people of color have been whitewashed in this culture, in that a person's definition of themselves can come more from what white society says I am than who am I really. Now I'm asking and I'm suggesting that as we go into 2012 and as we work on this idea of a justice-driven life, that we each focus some of our attention on the Socratic idea of self-understanding. Remembering that an unexamined life is not worth living, and that an examined life is often painful. Knowing ourselves at this stage of our development, individually and as a community, is going to be the key for us to take the next step into greater acceptance. So please continue conversations with people who are different from yourself, as Randy suggested. But most importantly, come to know yourself. Come to know what it means to be considered white by this society, or black, or Hispanic, or mixed, or Native American, Japanese, Greek, Irish, and come to know your rich heritage. And this will help color blindness to go away. The promise that Jesus put forth for human community and Martin Luther King died in pursuit of is still ours to claim. Here at All Souls, we are on a journey, right? And we are setting out a banquet table. This table is not just going to have meat and potatoes, right? At this banquet, we're going to have soul food and soul music. Right? We're going to have salsa and mole and merengue. Right? We're going to have biryani and bajans and baba ganoush and baklava. We're going to have tempura and tamales and teriyaki and tzatziki and Slovaki and kebabs and couscous and candied yams. All right? We're going to have falafel and pho. We're going to have pad thai and chicken fry and sweet potato pie. Paella and potato and tomato soup, peach cobbler, just call them out. We're going to have jerk chicken and jambalaya and masala dosa. What do you want at the table? You getting hungry? We're going to dance tango and disco and hip-hop and bebop and foxtrot, belly dance and swing dance and contra dance and country dance and Zumba. Jesus says there is more than enough room in my Father's house. It is a mansion with many rooms, right? And as Pete Seeger says and sings, my Father's mansion of many rooms has room for all his children, as long as we do share his love and set all free. And those who want them all the same don't understand the human game. My Father's mansion's many rooms has room for all his children if we but share his love and see that all are free. Know thyself, and the truth shall set you free. Amen.